The Holocaust, one of the saddest and most devastating episodes of World War II, remains a subject of deep reflection, with more than 6 million lives lost, including Jews, Roma, and other groups persecuted by the Nazis. The human suffering during this period has left an indelible mark on the history of humanity. In the midst of that darkness, the story of Dita Kraus, one of the survivors, rises as a testimony of resistance, courage, and survival. Below, we share the moving story of Dita Kraus, a young girl who experienced the horrors of the Holocaust firsthand. If you are a history lover, subscribe now to not miss the most fascinating updates from around the world. Dita Kraus's childhood before the Nazi invasion. Dita Kraus was born on July 12, 1929, in the city of Prague, in what is today the Czech Republic. Her family belonged to the middle class and had socialist inclinations. Although of Jewish origin, Dita used to say that she did not truly understand the meaning of being Jewish until the Nazi invasion completely transformed her life. The young girl lived a happy life with her family before tragedy knocked at their door. However, after the Nazi invasion, restrictions began to be imposed on the Jewish population and, particularly, on Dita's family. The invasion of the Sudetenland and the consequences for the Jews. In 1938, even before the war, Europe was already experiencing tense moments. Hitler had come to power in 1933, but it was in September 1938 when the situation became even more strained. Hitler threatened to invade the Sudetenland areas, which bordered Czechoslovakia, if they were not ceded to Germany. Despite the warnings, Czechoslovakia had no representatives at the negotiations of the Munich Conference, which was mainly between Great Britain, France, Italy, and Germany. The agreement gave Hitler what he wanted but also committed him to maintain peace in Europe, something that evidently did not happen. Less than 6 months after that conference, Hitler invaded Bohemia and Moravia, other provinces of Czechoslovakia. He established the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, which functioned as a puppet government, and the Czech population was treated as subjects, while ethnic Germans lived under the laws of the Third Reich. Approximately 118,000 people of Jewish origin, including Dita, lived in this new territory controlled by the Nazis. The Auschwitz concentration camp. In December 1943, Dita and her family were deported to the Auschwitz concentration camp. Before arriving there, they lived in the Terezin ghetto, a closed neighborhood where Jews were forced to live in deplorable conditions. Over the years, millions of people were deported from the Terezin ghetto to Auschwitz, and Dita was one of them. Upon arrival, she was received by SS guards and their dogs. The welcome was brutal, with new prisoners being beaten by other prisoners before being separated by sex and sent to the barracks. At Auschwitz, Dita and the other women were forced to undress and bathe with cold water before running to their barracks. Unlike the other prisoners, she was able to keep her boots, which allowed her to survive under extremely harsh conditions. However, like all prisoners, Dita was stripped of her identity and assigned a number, 73.3, which was tattooed on her left arm, as was common among prisoners. Living conditions in Auschwitz. Life in Auschwitz was unbearable. Conditions were extremely harsh, with forced labor, physical and psychological torture, hunger, and disease. Most prisoners died due to these inhumane conditions. Dita, like the other prisoners, received a minimal food ration, a soup at noon and a piece of bread with butter at night. These were the only meals of the day. The prisoner count, carried out twice a day, was also torture, as many times the numbers did not match and the roll calls were extended for hours under the camp's intense cold. The arrival of new prisoners, especially those coming from other camps, was another reminder of the cruelty of the place. When Dita arrived, she saw prisoners who had arrived months earlier. Their faces no longer showed joy but sadness and despair. Their skins were pale, their bodies extremely thin, and all were consumed by the constant fear of being sent to the gas chambers. The death of her father and the reality of the Holocaust. In February 1944, Dita experienced a personal tragedy when her father died. The young girl sneaked into the men's room, where she found her father dead, with his eyes closed and the soup untouched. Dita's mother did not immediately know of her husband's death, as she was hospitalized due to infectious diseases, something common in concentration camps due to the lack of health conditions, hygiene, and food. Although at first Dita felt relieved that her father was not sent to the gas chambers, the sadness and pain for her father's loss never left her. The life of children in Auschwitz. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of life in the concentration camps was the situation of the children. Although fun was minimal, in Auschwitz there was a block dedicated to children. Although they did not have access to toys or school materials, Dita and her fellow prisoners shared some oral lessons. Songs, games, and classes were a small source of joy amid so much despair. Dita was tasked with being the clandestine librarian of that block, preserving and distributing the few books that prisoners managed to hide. The leader of this block was Freddie Hush, a Jew who became a hero in Auschwitz for his dedication to caring for the children. Freddie convinced the Nazis to allow a space for the children, arguing that they would be quieter while their parents worked. Hush also managed to get extra food for the children and encouraged them to wash regularly, worried that they might contract diseases. Resistance and Dita's role. Dita also witnessed resistance within the camps. Some prisoners managed to discover a code used by the Nazis, SB6, which meant Special Treatment 6, that is, the death sentence in the gas chambers. In response, some prisoners began to rebel, setting fire to facilities inside the camp and organizing escapes. However, in the case of Freddie Hush, who was a resistance leader, the Nazis killed him before he could participate in the rebellion. Dita, who was only 14 years old, was also aware of the possibility of dying, but thanks to her cleverness, she managed to survive. At one point, she lied about her age to avoid being selected for the gas chambers. The Nazis sought strong and healthy prisoners who could work for the war effort, and Dita, by lying about her age, was selected along with her mother to continue living and working in a subcamp of the concentration camp. The liberation of Auschwitz. Finally, in 1945, the advance of Allied troops led to the liberation of the concentration camps. British troops arrived at Bergen-Belsen on April 15, 1945, finding 13,000 unburied corpses and approximately 60,000 survivors in extremely precarious conditions. Dita and her mother, although relieved by the liberation, still faced sadness and despair over all they had lost. Dita's mother had been working as the camp commander's secretary, and after the liberation, Dita was taken to Sweden to recover from the effects of typhus. Returning to life and her future. After the liberation, Dita Kraus and her mother went to Sweden, where Dita underwent several medical examinations before receiving documentation that allowed them to travel. In Sweden, Dita continued her life, eventually returning to Prague, where she reunited with Otto Kraus, who had also survived the Holocaust and was a teacher at Auschwitz. They married and built a family. Dita published 2 books about her life, including her biography, The Librarian of Auschwitz, which was a worldwide bestseller. Don't forget to subscribe and comment on what topic you would like us to explore in the next video.